We have more now on that long-awaited report from the joint WHO-China study into the origins of COVID-19. They've concluded that it's most likely that the virus came through transmission from bats to human via another animal, and very unlikely it came from a Wuhan lab. Let's speak now to Dr. Bharat Pankania from the University of Exeter for more. Dr. Pankania, explain more about this whole idea that it came from bats via a secondary animal to human. How does that actually happen, and what could that likely culprit in the middle be?
So what happens is bats carry their normal range of coronaviruses. They are a problem of the bats. They stay with the bats. They don't do anything to human beings. And then there are other mammals or other animals. It doesn't have to be a mammal. So let's call it animal B. And what happens is when this animal B has two infections, one from the bat and one from itself. So now it has an infection from A and B. And when it has a dual infection, the viruses can what we call reassort. In other words, it captures a little bits and pieces from the bat virus, little bits and pieces from its own virus, and makes a new virus C. Now, if this new virus is infectious to humans, then we've given rise to a newly reassorted coronavirus, which has pandemic potential, which is what has happened here in this SARS-CoV-2 pandemic.
Dr. Pankania, one of China's main theories for some time now has been that the coronavirus didn't originate in China at all, that it may have come from cold chain products. But this report doesn't just cast doubt on it, it says it's extremely unlikely now. What are your thoughts?
I totally agree that it is highly unlikely, because if we look at case reports and the epicenter of when people started to become ill in late 2019, we noticed that the epicenter was Wuhan, and not only that, more focused on the wet market in the Wuhan area. And therefore, the focus is that something untoward happened there rather than it was brought in on frozen, cold, chilled foods from abroad. I think the abroad policy, the abroad hypothesis is not viable. The one that is viable is something untoward happened in Wuhan, most probably a reassorted virus because of the practices that we have in many parts of the Far East of having too many animals caught from the wild, kept in captivity, and then bad things happen.
Are you also satisfied that the accidental lab leak theory has been conclusively disproven, or do you feel it's a bit premature to shut that door?
I think as far as we can go, people have looked at the genome of the original SARS-CoV-2 virus, and their conclusions are that this is a reassorted virus of bat origin rather than a virus generated in a laboratory of man's involvement. So as far as all the leading scientists and others' analysis is that this is a reassorted virus of bat origin rather than something coming from a laboratory.
And Dr. Pankania, what further research might you recommend ought to be done once this report is made public?
It's ever so important to study the origin of these zoonotic viruses, meaning something that has jumped from an animal kingdom into humans and then caused a pandemic. We also need to do a lot of research into environmental health, because it is the messing around with the environment which gives rise to the emergence of new viruses. So we need to look at the environmental impact of humans leading to the emergence of new viruses. This is not old science. We know a lot about messing around with the environment, which leads to the emergence of new viruses. Furthermore, we also need to look at farming practices whereby wild animals such as bats are collected in the wild and then brought to market and kept in captivity next to another animal that has also been brought to market, held in captivity. And when those two animals meet together, which they would never meet in nature, reassortment of new viruses occurs. So we need to research into it and do all the prevention work, because prevention is a lot cheaper than spending trillions upon trillions once we get a pandemic.
We always appreciate your thoughts. Thank you, Dr. Bharat Pankhania of the University of Exeter.